So really, if you look at it from your current group and then your future group, we're setting you up for success.
Welcome to the D3 Discipleship Podcast, a podcast about the language and tools that help to create a culture of intentional discipleship in your church. We are excited that you're joining us today and hope that you enjoy what you hear.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the D3 Discipleship Podcast. My name is Ray, and alongside me is my co-host, Katie Ketzner, and she is from afar. She is at her house. We're trying something new on the podcast, but I think it's going to work.
Yeah, I know. You said alongside me. I was like, can we really say that anymore?
Alongside me virtually, she is here. That's right.
Yeah. So if you hear some annoying dogs in the background, that's from my house.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's all right.
I haven't gotten the shot collars yet.
It's what we got to do with our adjustment of baby and different things. And so I think it's going to work out great, though. So,
yeah.
Except for every time I get a notification on my phone, apparently we're going to get a ding that's going to happen. So there's that.
I didn't hear it.
But
did you hear it?
I did hear it. Yeah. So sorry to our listeners. But well, over the past couple of weeks, we have been walking through all the different phases and kind of giving the why behind each of the phases. We like to start each season. This is season 4. Like to start each season with kind of this, why do we do this particular thing? And so we have gone through all of the phases, and today we are on what, Katie?
Competency.
Competency. That's right. Yeah, it's a pretty important one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of discipleship is sending out other people to do, what you've done for them. And so they kind of need to know how.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we'll jump in. Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so this phase is called competency. And I feel like people probably get a general sense of what that means, but competency isn't really a word that most people use every single day, maybe.
Yep.
I don't know. Unless you're like super smart, smarter than me. So, like when we're talking about this, let's start by defining what being competent means.
Yeah. So we actually looked it up, right? So so competency is the state of being competent. So then we went a step further and we looked up what competent is, and it's having the necessary ability, knowledge, or skill to do something successful. So I think when we talk about the competency of discipleship, it's knowing or the leader recognizing that the people in their group are actually understanding of the tools, understanding of the process, understanding of what, like you said, replicating into the next person, like knowing what to replicate and replicate it in the right way.
Yeah. Well, that's what stood out to me was the last word, successfully.
Yes.
Like to do it, to be successful.
Yeah.
So someone can leave discipleship after being transformed and kind of know a general sense of what their leader did, but they might not be able to replicate that. So going into competency, it's here's what we did and we do, so that way you can be successful in doing it for someone else.
Right. Yeah, and I think of like people who are successfully competent in like the way they do things, right, would be Chick-fil-A. Like every Chick-fil-A you go to, they're super nice. They have the greatest customer service there ever is, right? And I would think a bad example here in town would be in Kansas City. Ooh, yes, I've got one. So Dutch Brothers is incredible at their just vibe, right? But the one on Shawnee Mission Parkway, I feel like is not at the level of the others. Like just from speed and customer service and all of those things. Anyway, just judgment on my part. But yeah. But when you think about, successfully replicating and competency of what you're actually trying to accomplish, I think Chick-fil-A has that down in this way of like, we're not just selling a chicken sandwich, like we are a customer service business, those kind of things. Yeah.
Well, going off your, Dutch Brothers Chick-fil-A vibe here that we got going on.
Yeah.
So why does the one on Shawnee Mission Parkway, the way that it is, if they're not as good as the other ones, then what does that do for you? Like, I mean, for me, I would not want to go there. I would go out of my way to go to one of the good ones, or I would just go to Scooters down the way, or Starbucks, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, if we are making this a transferable principle into leadership and discipleship,
right?
What does that mean then?
Yeah. Well, I would say, yeah. So, I know that the one on Shawnee Mission Parkway, if the line is further than so many cars, that it's going to take me about 30 minutes to go through there. So then I'm going to avoid it, right? And so I think the same thing would be with our leaders and like preparing them and them being competent. Like somebody's going to want to be in your group, enjoy being in your group and those things. And so really, if you look at it from your current group and then your future group, we're setting you up for success. We're setting you up so that you do understand, have knowledge of those things, and are gonna do them right and do them well, so that again it gets replicated. I think we talked about in the last episode, like this idea of a stamp with an ink pad, right? And you stamp it, and then you stamp it off the ink pad, and then as you continue to stamp it, it gets lighter and lighter. I think competency helps us keep that darker every time we're stamping it out.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
For that, but that's good.
Yeah, because we're kind of we're checking in on you, right? We're making sure you really get it, you really understand it, and again, helping you succeed as you're going to go plant or not plant. You're not planting churches yet, but go start your group.
So, wrong roll, Ray. Wrong roll.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, not only that, but I'm thinking like, okay, so if you have a leader who is being like misinforming you in how to do it, number one, because they hadn't gone through the competency process. I mean, that could have even more further implications.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Like, I mean, because people not only would be turned off for discipleship, they might be turned off of like Christianity and stuff like that because you are not representing well.
Right.
So I don't know.
No, that's good.
I mean, that could be like far-fetched, but I mean, in some cases, it's very possible.
Yeah.
If you go down the line far enough of not being trained well.
Yeah. And I think, we have seen examples of people get frustrated in a group because of something that, maybe they already knew, like, hey, this is kind of how it's supposed to go, but that's not how it went. And so they get frustrated by that and different things. And so, yeah, I think that competency definitely comes into play with that. So,
all right. So that's kind of the why, right?
Yeah.
Why we do it.
Yep.
So how do we know when is a good time to start this phase with your group?
Yeah.
You've got the information and it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah. So I'd say, you've gone through the tools, you've completed your out, like those type things. I think it's time to start that. So the benefit of the competency phase, I think another why to the competency is it gives us an opportunity to revisit the tools, and it gives us an opportunity, again, to protect the language, right? And so if you've made it through all the tools, then, hey, now it's time to turn that corner on the pathway, jump in and hit the tools again. And so that gives you an opportunity to revisit them with your group. Okay, but
the purpose of the tools is to bring about transformation.
Correct? Yeah.
So what if, number one, what if you've gone through the tools and people aren't transforming?
Ooh.
Number two, what if there is more transformation to be done?
Yeah. So I think
that might be going back into phase two.
Yeah.
That might be going backwards for us, but
no,
I mean, it kind of plays into this also.
Yeah, you're right. No, I think if you haven't seen transformation in the lives of your folks, then yes, you need to hang out in phase two. You don't need to rush it into phase three and go, oh, okay, we're going to revisit it. It'll be fine. I think it's more, hey, we're going to stay in the transformation as long as we need to, and then we'll move into the competency phase. Yeah.
What does that look like, though? Like, if you've already gone through all the tools and people are just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Do you just keep doing learning circles, or?
Yeah, so I would say it's dependent on what they're stuck in, right? So that would be, again, kind of hey, what tool do we need to revisit? What do we need to pull out? So, if everybody, if we're at the place that we've gone through all the tools and everybody's struggling with abiding, like, okay, well, we're we're in a pickle here. But if it's like, somebody's I almost said struggle is marriage. Their marriage is struggling. Like, hey, we can revisit the marriage square. We can kind of talk through that. We can even see, like, do we need to take the step of again, getting them professional help in their marriage? I think there's, again, depending on what thing is holding the group up or that individual up, I think is kind of how you evaluate that. So that goes back to being on the leader a little bit, right?
Yeah. And you're not saying that they have to be completely transformed in that area, correct?
Right.
I mean, because especially if it's a marriage thing, that's a process.
Yes.
And that could be, that's lifelong, honestly.
Yes. Yeah, you could be there a while.
Yeah. But you're just seeing some growth and them walking in the right direction.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And then again, on the flip side of that coin, you are going to revisit all of those tools. You're going to have more conversation about them. So, that if you've seen a little bit of transformation, then cool, but we're going to readdress that when we come back to that tool. Like, hey, you said you were experiencing some transformation, or we kind of picked up on some transformation you were experiencing. How's that going? I think that's a healthy question to ask in each of those tools when they're retaught is, how's everybody doing in this area? Gives you an opportunity to step back into that again.
Yeah. And, I can't remember if I've said this before, but going back to my teaching days, that's kind of what we were taught as another measure to help kids learn it themselves is have them try to teach someone else.
Right.
So number one, you can see where their thought processes are going wrong, or you can see the learning that has taken place. So you're right, the fact where you don't have to be completely perfect going into competency. You can still be refined when you are going through it.
Right. And again, that idea is that they're going to teach that as though they're leading the group that night, right? You come in, you say, hey, everybody, here's the thing. Katie's leading tonight. And Katie, we want you to take it away as though it was at your house, your group, you're the leader, you're teaching it in that same exact way. Mm-hmm. And that gives us, again, a full picture of like you just said, best way to learn is by teaching it, by doing it a little bit, tossing you to the deep end a little bit. But on the flip side of that, you're now in this safe space, right? These folks you've spent months with, like it's okay to screw up or mess up because they're right there to help you and pick you up if you do screw up. So, yeah, that's kind of the idea.
Okay, so how do we know, well, we've talked about this, but how do we know which ones to reteach?
Yeah.
And how many? Do we have each person teach each one to see if they've understood all of them?
Yeah.
Or like what?
No, so that's a great question because that was, it's actually a Q&A that I got. What? Mind blown. I wish I had a sound effect for that. But anyway, so, if you have a smaller group that's like 2 or 3 people, I hesitate to say that you have to reteach all of them. Does that make sense? Like, I think you need to go over all of them. Absolutely. Make sure everybody's good in them. But like the APEST is like one that I don't know that you would have to spend a ton of time on. I'm trying to think of other ones that you wouldn't have to spend a ton of time on, but you could like converse about. Like, I think you need to talk about all of them. Absolutely. But if you have 2 or 3 people in your group and spreading that where everybody's teaching like 4 tools or, I don't know the math right offhand. Maybe I should do the math. But you know what I mean? Like if you're having everybody to have to reteach 3 tools, then that's hard. But if you have like 7 people in your group, then let's hit all of them. Let's have somebody do one. And then the ones that we feel comfortable in, let's just kind of review those. Right. So the way we did it in our group was we had 5 guys, 2 leaders. So we had the 5 guys take one tool that they taught fully as though it was their night. And then they had one that they kind of revisited and reviewed with all of us. And so what we had them do is like, tell us what the shape is. What are the main points of that? What are the main scriptures? And then I asked the question as the leader, okay, does everybody feel comfortable in this? And so there was actually one that everybody didn't feel comfortable in, and so we spent some time on it, right? Like, I actually had a guy that was gone, I think, on the week that we taught that one or something like that. And so we went back and revisited it as a whole group. So I think there's some wisdom in that from the leader of like, okay, how many of these do we feel comfortable in? How many do we really need to reteach? Now, if you say, well, the whole group's going to reteach one tool and we have 7 people in our group, that's not it. That's not the win, right? So it's like, no, everybody needs to reteach one because, like you said, gives them the rep, gives them the rhythm, gives them used to it, but also like the one they teach is more than likely going to be the one that they're like, they remember and are most passionate about.
Mm-hmm. I like the kind of recap that you were talking about. Like, it doesn't have to go into a full teaching session mode.
Right.
I mean, you can still go over main points and discuss it and still get a good idea of what their understanding is of it.
Yeah.
And not have them reteach it. And I think that would be good, especially in that group that might have 2 or 3. I think that would be good to be, okay, what was your favorite one?
Yep.
Teach that.
Right.
And then what's the one that you feel least confident in?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't do that in bigger groups,
right.
But in the smaller one, why not? You have the time, you have the space.
Yep.
So take one that you feel least confident in, teach it, because, I mean, as leaders, for me, for sure, like some of them, I have to go back and relearn, and not relearn, but like remind myself of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't feel as confident all the time in it. So I think it would be good for them to go back and see kind of what it feels like to go into teaching, not knowing it so well.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling, at least for me, it sparks like, oh, I need to learn this better, and it makes me deep dive into it,
right? So
I can teach it and not feel like an idiot, the way I did.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, and again, it comes back to you as a leader giving them the resources as they begin to teach, right? So this is the point that we kind of let them peek behind the curtain. This is the point that we can let them know about the website, let them know about the password to the website and the tools and different things, and then they can watch the videos and prepare themselves just as they, like you said, just as they would need to do as they were a leader. And I think that's again, the piece we want them to feel, a little bit of weight we want them to feel of like, hey, this is your week. Like, how would you do this if you were leading a group, And I think that true colors show up in that moment as well of like, how prepared are they? But I think it's fun when you have people in your group who really surprise you. They come in ready. They've got all their notes and like they've thought about it and done it. I think those are really cool moments to also see like, wow, they got it. They got it. They did it, And so, kind of a little bit of like, hey, I led them and now look at them, So.
I am kind of curious. I wonder if we could get some people to give their their stories about when they went through competency.
Oh yeah.
Like leaders that are listening.
Yeah.
If you have like a certain story that you want to share about your competency phase when you were going through it with your group, or something that like worked well for you, like Ray was saying, how he had them teach one and then just kind of do bullet points on another one.
Yeah.
Like, how do you guys go through competency? What are some things that you do that, maybe not everybody does?
Right.
What do you see that works well? And what are some difficulties that you might have had during this phase? I would be interested in hearing that because I always like learning from other people.
Yeah, that would be super helpful for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't just come out and reach out to us, guys, we might have to track you down because I know a few listeners that are frequent flyers here.
Yep.
And so I know you by name and I'm going to come after you.
That's right. We will find you. I think something to remind folks about is that we have on the website under competency phase, we have a resource sheet that they can go to that has all of the tools, and then you can it has a blank next to it where you can assign the people in your group that tool. And so that's super helpful. I think, again, I think there's a couple resources buried on the website that some folks don't know about, and that's a great one. And so you can, again, print that out, and then that night that you're kind of starting to assign tools, you can write names in, and so and so again, you have proof that, if you assign a tool to somebody and they're like, oh, I didn't know it was my week, or I didn't know that was my tool. Like, well, we wrote it down and we talked about it. So actually we do know that. But yeah, I think that's a great help and little thing we've kind of created for you. So yeah.
I'm really enjoying the playbook. It makes teaching a lot easier.
Yeah.
So kudos to you and Libby. Good job, guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 2.0 is much better. And I hope we don't have to do that for a while. And Libby, I'd say, was probably in the same boat. So, yeah.
So how do we know when you're ready to move out of competency? Is it just when people have taught their tools, or is there more to that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple pieces to that. Like the first one would be, obviously, we've made it through all the tools. We've taught them. But I think, again, I think as a leader, you have to have a finger on the temperature and the pulse of your group. Like, are we truly ready? Like, do I feel like kind of you can flip it? Like, would I want to be in this person's group? Like, do I feel like they're ready and competent and know this well enough? Or do we need, and I don't mean that you have to go another 6 months either. Like, I think that's something that some people maybe hesitate with is like, well, if we go back and revisit something, we're going to be here another, 2 months. Well, no, I think you can take like a week or two more and have those conversations, and then maybe somebody just feels a little bit better about it in those 2 weeks. And so if there's just something that you feel like in your gut, like, I think this is one of those trust the gut a little bit and like talk to your co-leader, like, okay, do we feel like everybody's ready? Like, do we feel confident sending them out and going, hey, they're ready to go? Because reality is, like, the deployment phase of the pathway is really like 2 weeks, right? So, I mean, it's not a true square in a sense. Yeah. It's more like a fancy J. And so, but like, and so, if you spend another week or two going back and you're like, hey, we just want to retouch on this one more time, just make sure everybody feels good on it. I think that's okay. But yeah, so again, just to answer your question briefly, instead of long and rambling, would be, yes, we've gone through the tools, we've done them, and we feel like everybody is good to go. So, yeah.
Okay.
Woohoo.
Cool. And then that is competency. That's phase 3.
That's it. That's
and
it.
You're done. And then you're basically like almost out of there.
Yeah. Landing gears down. You're heading into the airport.
Woot woot.
So, yeah.
Alrighty.
Very cool. Anything else we need to say?
I don't think so.
All right.
I think my questions have been answered.
Well, so with that, if you have any questions, you can send them to d3info@newcitychurch.com. We'd love to have those. They help kind of point us in the direction of where we want to go on the podcast and different things like that. What else? If you need resources, d3pathway.com is a great resource for you. There's the pooch. We made it all the way through. And then the pooch at the very end. But d3pathway.com for all your resources as a leader. Again, if you have any questions, let us know. We can help you out. We're here to help you and resource you as best we can. So, yep. Yeah. So, Katie, thank you for joining me from afar.
You're so welcome.
Yes, saved gas in the drive.
Yes.
And bye to the dog as well.
Yeah. Bella.
We'll see you guys next time on the D3 Discipleship Podcast.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that today's information was helpful and useful for your discipling journey. We would like to encourage you to subscribe, review, and share on social media. If you would like more information, check out d3pathway.com.